Hi everyone, welcome to my channel Wibbity Bobbity Books. My name is Ellie and this is going to be my spring TBR. So before we get into this video, I just wanted to take a moment to check in with you all and see how you're doing. I know this time of year can be quite difficult for a lot of people. I know for myself, I feel like winter feels like it's been going on forever and I'm just so excited for spring. I feel like we're finally starting to see the weather start to change here in the UK, which is really good. It's been really great for my mood. We're having lighter evenings and brighter days, so let's hope it continues that way and we get some lovely spring weather soon. But yeah, that kind of inspired me to do this video really, which is going to be my spring mood TBR. So if you're new here, I don't tend to make rigid TBRs because as soon as I do that, I no longer have any motivation to read any of those books because it feels more like an obligation than something that I'm doing for fun. But it is nice to pull some books from my shelves that I think are fitting for the season to help me kind of live in the season, and also to just have a more sort of narrow selection of books to choose from when I'm deciding what to read. So I'm still a mood reader, so I may or may not read all of these books in the spring months, but hopefully the plan is for me to pull from this selection and hopefully get some of these titles read over the next few months. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump straight in and share with you the books that I'm hopefully going to be reading. And the one that I'm going to start with is my current read. So I do know that I'm going to be reading this one because I'm literally reading it right now. But I also think that this is great for this time of year. So this is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This is a fantasy and adult fantasy series, and it's one that's been on my radar for a long time because this series has received such high acclaims. It's won loads of Hugo Awards and everyone seems to love it, and I think for that reason I've been a little bit nervous to pick it up just in case I don't love it as much as everyone else seems to. But I'm finally going to do it and I'm excited. So I've read about the first 150 pages of this one and I can confirm I am enjoying it so far. And the reason why I think this is perfect for spring is because it has a big focus on nature, because the whole setting of this book is that it takes place on Earth. It's not clear whether that's our Earth or if it's like an alternate reality type Earth, but it's kind of in the far-flung future, and the Earth that's in this book is ravaged by these storms and these cataclysmic events that happen a lot. So this world is just racked with these, they call them seasons, so these periods of time where there's this huge environmental events that happen and basically destroy the planet. And so we're following a society that's had to try and survive these seasons, and they have to kind of continuously rebuild because every time one of these seasons happens, everything is destroyed and they kind of have to build up from the rubble again. So it's a really interesting setting, and I think because of the sort of nature side of it, because of the changing seasons, the changing like dramatic weather, for some reason that just makes it feel like a springtime book for me. So yeah, I've been really enjoying this one. We follow 3 points of view, and one of the points of view is actually told in second person, so that was a little bit strange. I don't think I've read many books at all, if any, that are written in second person, so it's literally told as if you are experiencing the things in those chapters, and I'm gonna admit that I did struggle with that initially. It's a little bit weird, but after a while my brain kind of like got used to it and it actually made it quite an immersive reading experience. And I've heard from other reviewers and other people that that point of view has a purpose and that the payoff is well worth it. So I haven't reached that point yet, but I'm very excited to see how that plays out and why the author has chosen to present one of the narratives in that way. But yeah, it's so unique and I'm just really enjoying this world. It's quite brutal. Obviously we've got these extreme situations. It's an apocalypse style story, and the magic in here as well is really quite brutal. You have certain people in this world who can kind of control the elements in a way. They can kind of attune to the earth and they can prevent earthquakes and things from happening. They can kind of control the earth, which is obviously useful in this setting, but at the same time they are very powerful and feared because of it, because if they lose control that can have disastrous effects and they can be incredibly dangerous. So it's really interesting seeing how those people are used in this society, and yeah, I'm having a really fun time with this one, so I'm excited to carry on with this one and potentially read the next 2 books in this trilogy as well. So that's the Broken Earth trilogy and is the first book on this list. The next book that I have on my TBR is The Secret Garden, written by Frances Hodgson Bennett. So this is a classic, and it's one of my goals this year to at least read 1 or 2 classics, because I always put off reading classics because I find it really intimidating. I'm just worried that I won't be able to understand, because often the language is a little bit different, and I don't know, I just never really feel compelled to read them, but I do think that I would enjoy some of these classics if I do actually kind of force myself to take that first step and to open the book and actually try. And this one's on my radar because I am a big fan of the 90s movie The Secret Garden, which is obviously based on this book, and so my understanding of the story is almost entirely from that movie, so apologies if it's slightly wrong, but in the movie at least we follow our main character, who's a young girl, I think she's called Mary, and she lives in India with her parents until tragedy strikes and her parents die, and following the death of her parents she moves to England to live with her uncle, and it's a huge culture shock. She's gone from living in the colourful India to living in a very grey, rainy England in a manor house that's kind of dark and a bit creepy, and it's set during spring, and she spends a lot of time outdoors when the weather is nice. She goes out, she explores the grounds, she explores the gardens, and she finds this hidden doorway that leads to this secret garden, hence the title of the book. And the garden is abandoned really, and it's all overgrown, and she basically takes it upon herself to bring that garden back to life, and she does it with the help of a few friends that she makes along the way. And it's very much a story about grief, but also friendship and healing and nature and the beauty of nature and the healing power of nature. And I think for all of those reasons this is going to be an absolute delight to read in the spring. I'm hoping that it's going to be full of lots of gorgeous descriptions of the flowers, of the gardening, of the birds and all of that, that will really help me to get immersed in the season. So yeah, hopefully I will pick this one up at some point in the next few months, and I'm excited. Okay, so the next one on my list is Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands, written by Heather Fawcett. Look at that cover, that just is spring to me, isn't it? It's got all of those gorgeous flowers on there. I love the green, I love the sort of mushrooms and things on there. I don't know, I just feel like this is going to be the perfect book to pick up this season. Apologies if you've heard me talking about this before, because I feel like I've mentioned it a few times on my channel, but this is the second book in a fantasy series, and the first one is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, and I read that one when it first came out a couple of years ago I think, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm excited to see where our main character goes from there. So the first book is like a cozy adult fantasy, and it follows Emily Wilde, and she is creating this Encyclopedia of Fairies in the first book. So she is a researcher and a scholar, and she travels to this Nordic town to basically do some research and to find out a little bit about their folklore and about the fairies that live in that area. And when she's there, she's joined by her colleague, who is also kind of her rival, and he just shows up to help her unexpectedly, and at first she's kind of annoyed because she can't really stand this man, but then she starts to realise that it's actually quite helpful having him around because he is very charismatic, very outgoing, and the complete opposite to her. She is very much a bit of a recluse, she's quite shy, she's quite socially awkward, and she struggles with the social side of her research. So the two of them actually end up making a really good team, and you basically just follow them as they are uncovering more about the fairies and things that live in that area. And it is a little bit dark, but it's also quite cozy. There's a little bit of comedy, there's banter between the two main characters, and the only thing that I would say is it's presented as if Emily Wilde is literally writing her journal in the first book, so it has quite a dry, quite an academic tone, because that just is her character. So I feel that's something that you may or may not get on with, and I think you just kind of have to try it and see. But I really warmed to our main character. I felt like she was quite relatable, and I just really enjoyed the banter between her and her colleague in the first book. So yeah, I'm very excited to see what else she gets up to in this fantasy series. Okay, so the next book on my list is one that I've been meaning to get to for a while, and one that I am a little bit behind with, but that is Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. So this is one of his secret project books, and it was all the rage when it first came out. As far as I understand, Brandon Sanderson wrote 4 standalone stories, I think during the pandemic, and then he released them kind of spontaneously without telling people what they were about, so no one had any expectations, and there was definitely that kind of like, ooh, excitement created with these stories. But yeah, they are all within his Cosmere universe, and all I really know about this one is that he took a lot of inspiration from The Princess Bride, which is a story and a movie that I really enjoy, and it also is something that I'm very intrigued by, because The Princess Bride is not something that I would associate with Brandon Sanderson. Like, that is very much a whimsical, fun, light-hearted fairy tale, and I feel like Brandon Sanderson's work normally doesn't have that vibe, so I'm really intrigued to see how that works. And I've heard fantastic things about this story. I don't know a huge amount more than that. I think I'm not going to read the blurb, because it's sometimes nice to just jump in without having too many expectations. So yeah, I'm excited to give this one a go. All I know is I think it has an island setting, and so for that reason I think it would be fun to read in spring. And I also think that the sort of fairy tale light quality to it is something that I'm going to really gravitate towards this season. So yeah, I'm really excited for that one. Okay, so the next couple of books that are on my radar are the sequels to Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. I forget what they're called because I've read them on Kindle, so I don't have the physical copies with me, but I really want to read the second and third book in this series, because I read Annihilation fairly recently and I really enjoyed it. So the first book, Annihilation, you've probably heard of before, because I feel like there was a really great adaptation that was done of it, the movie, which again I'm a big fan of. But yeah, the first book follows a biologist who is part of a team of researchers who are going to investigate this area of land which is cut off from the rest of the continent, and it's called Area X, and no one really knows about this place. It's kind of like a bit of a phenomena, like it's a bit of a mystery, and the researchers that went before them, so the parties that went out to investigate this area before, either never returned, or some kind of tragedy happened. So basically no one really knows what's going on with this strange area, and so we follow our biologist as she goes on this mission, as she enters Area X, and what she discovers there. And it's a very, very strange book. I would describe it as a lyrical horror, a lyrical sci-fi horror, and it's almost kind of dreamlike. It's quite bizarre, but I really love that about this story. And there's also quite a lot of paranoia, quite a lot of psychological elements within this story as well, and it's just fascinating. And the reason why I loved it as well is because it's set in almost like a jungly type environment. There's lots of kind of foliage and strange plant life and strange animals, and it's very, very immersive. And again, I think for that reason I think it would be good to read these books during the spring, because I want to read about nature and things like that. So yeah, I'm really excited to get to the next 2 books. I'm not going to look up what they're about, because I feel like these ones are good to just jump in without knowing too much, because it is a wild experience and a bit of a fever dream type situation normally with these Jeff Vandermeer books. So yeah, I'm really excited to continue on with this series, and they're nice and short as well, so I feel like they might be nice ones to pick up over the next few months. Okay, so the next book that I want to read in spring is actually a reread, and that is Silver in the Woods by Emily Tesh. So the reason why I want to reread this book is because A, I really loved it when I first read this book, but B, I still haven't gotten to the sequel So this is a duology, and I feel like it's been a while since I read the first one, so I really want to go back and reread that so I can recall everything and I can really appreciate the second book that I will hopefully read straight after, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm rambling a bit there, but basically these are both novellas, and they're kind of fantasy novellas. They are, or the first one is a retelling of the Green Man or the Wild Man folk tale, which is something that I don't know much about and something that I haven't really read much about, but I just remember adoring this first book, Silver in the Woods, and from memory it follows our main character, who's a man called Henry Silver, and he ends up becoming the owner of this property and this area of land that includes a wooded area, and he travels around, he's exploring, he goes into the woods, and he ends up meeting this other man called Tobias who lives in the woods, and they kind of strike up a friendship, and our main character Henry sort of digs up some mysteries about Tobias's past and about the reason why he is connected to this woods. And yeah, it's just a really whimsical story with some dark magic elements in there, and I just really adored the description of the forest. It's such a celebration of nature, and I remember when I read this first novella, I just wanted to go out. I wanted to go out into the nature and run around barefoot and breathe in the scent of, you know, the trees, and to get my toes in the mud. I don't know, it just made me want to go out and just be immersed in nature, and I just loved it for that. So yeah, I really want to reread this first one. I also remember that it had a really sweet, quite subtle, blossoming romance in it, a queer romance, and it was just really beautifully done, and I just thought that the book was such a delight. So yeah, I'm really excited to reread the first one and then go into the sequel. Okay, so the next book that I would like to read during the spring season is In an Absent Dream by Shannon Maguire. So this is the fourth book in the Wayward Children series, and I really enjoy this series. Well, I didn't really enjoy the third book in this series, but I loved the first two, and I'm still very excited to continue on with this series. So this is a series of fantasy novellas, and they're portal fantasies, and the premise behind this series is that there are children who have found other worlds. So they found hidden doorways that take them to other worlds, and then for some reason some of these children end up coming back to our world, and it's kind of against their will. I feel like a common theme amongst these books is that these kids are misfits, and when they find their doorway that takes them to another fantasy world, that is where they feel like they are most understood and where they belong, and they have a really positive experience there. And then when, for whatever reason, they end up back in our world, they are then faced with the fact that they no longer really fit in, they don't really want to be there, all they want to do is to wait for their door to appear again so that they can go back to the world where they feel like they belong. And because there are these troubled children, there is a school that houses them. So there's a woman called Eleanor West who recognises these children. She had a similar experience herself when she was younger, and so she decided to make this sanctuary for them, this school for wayward children, where they can come and they can be safe and they can wait for their doors to open without being judged by everybody else. And yeah, each book follows a different main protagonist and is exploring a different world, the world that they went to, and so they do have slightly different flavours between the books, but they are so interesting. The characters are so lovable, and what I love about this series is that it is fantastical and whimsical in the way that it's written, but it's also quite lyrical because it's also quite literary because it explores lots of really interesting and sometimes heavy themes, things that children face that I feel like a lot of people might be able to relate to, things like figuring out who you are, dealing with childhood trauma, gender, sexuality, lots of really interesting and kind of meaty topics that are discussed within this whimsy fantasy world, and sometimes they are quite dark leaning, which I quite like as well, because I enjoy books that are both whimsical and fantastical and light in nature, but also have some dark twisted elements to them, and so I really enjoy the books for those reasons. And yeah, these again are nice and short, so I feel like they'll be nice ones to pick up, you know, if the weather gets nice and I just want something to read when I'm sitting outside or something. And a lot of these worlds are quite whimsical, but also quite immersive and fantastical and whimsical, and again those are kind of ideas that I'm drawn to this time of year for some reason. And I need to really get on with this series because it has a lot of books in it and I am not actually that far through, so I really need to crack on and continue on, but I'm excited for it. Okay, so the next book that I would like to potentially read in the spring is Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. So this is one of his standalone fantasy books within the Cosmere world, and I've heard fantastic things about this one. People say that this one is actually quite light and a bit more funny than some of Brandon Sanderson's other works. But yeah, I think this might be adult, although the synopsis sounds like it's YA leaning, so I don't know if it's on the younger side, but it sounds like a fun time. It basically follows two princesses, Vivienna and Ciri, and Vivienna was contracted through a treaty to marry the God King, who is from a rival nation, and so she spent her whole time thinking that this is going to be her fate. But then when the time comes, the king sends his other daughter Ciri to go and meet the treaty instead. So the other sister is the one that is going to fulfill this marriage treaty, and we follow on from there. That's all I really know. Aside from that, I've heard that it has a fantastic magic system, as Brandon Sanderson books always do. I believe this one involves breaths, which sounds quite interesting. And I don't know, I think there's something about the cover that makes me feel like this would be good to pick up in spring, and the fact that it has a lighter tone, again, I think that's something that I think would be nice to pick up this time of year. So yeah, that is going to be on my mood TBR as well. The next book that I have on this mood TBR is The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. So this is a fantasy book. I believe is it the first in a series, I think? It's a new release anyway, and what intrigued me about this book is firstly the cover and the fact that we have lots of naturey elements on here, which makes me feel like it would be good to read this time of year, because as I said before, I kind of crave naturey things during the spring because it's when things are starting to grow and I don't know, you might start to spend more time outdoors, and I just gravitate towards that kind of thing. And the first sort of like line on the blurb of this says, in an opulent mansion at the borders of the empire, an imperial officer lies dead, killed when a tree spontaneously erupted from his body. I love things that involve nature, horror, and nature corrupting like people and things like that. So the fact that we have a body with this tree sprouting out of it just immediately has me gripped and intrigued. So I believe this is a fantasy with a mystery at the heart of it, and I just feel like it's going to be a fun time, and I've heard lots of positive things about it, so I'm very excited. I'm not going to read any more of the blurb because I want to be surprised. But yeah, hopefully this will be a nice fun mystery to pick up during the spring season. Okay, so next up we have a classic fantasy that I've been meaning to get to forever, and that is Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin. So this is the first 4 books in the Wizards of Earthsea series in this book here, and I would love to try out this series because A, it is such a classic and it's inspired a lot of the fantasy genre, and B, it includes lots of tropes that I really enjoy. It says that it has a magic school in there, I believe it has a dragon, it's a coming of age story, and I just feel like this is going to be fun. I've also heard that Le Guin is fantastic at nature descriptions and that her world is incredibly immersive, so again for that reason I think it might be fun to try this one out in spring. But all I know about this series is that it follows a wizard who unwittingly releases a shadow upon the world and I guess we're following the aftermath of that. And the only other thing I know about the setting is that there are hundreds of islands that are separated by mostly uncharted waters, and the island setting again just sounds like something I would enjoy. I tend to like things that have an island setting, and that mixed with my understanding of Le Guin's writing and the fact that she's good at nature descriptions, I don't know, I just feel like this is going to be such a fun one to pick up during the spring. The next book that I want to include on this list is another Jeff Vandermeer, and this is Hummingbird Salamander. This one has such a bright, bold cover which just immediately draws my attention and makes me feel like it would be fun to pick up in spring. Similar to Annihilation, I'm imagining that this one will be quite weird and wonderful, quite strange, quite sinister, quite twisted, and I like all of those things. So it says on the back here, Jane Smith receives an unexpected envelope containing the key to a storage unit, and inside that storage unit is a taxidermy hummingbird and directions to a taxidermy salamander. However, this bizarre treasure hunt that Jane never expected to ask for sets in motion a series of events that quickly puts her and her family in danger. As she desperately seeks answers, she discovers time is running out for her and possibly for the world. So I feel like that doesn't give much away. It is a slightly bizarre setup to the story. We're following Jane on this strange treasure hunt. But yeah, I don't know. It says on the front here, some of the quotes from other people, it says that it's frankly superb, glows in the dark with original thinking. It says this is natural history as police procedural and life on Earth as the scene of a crime. I don't know, I feel like it's going to be naturey, I feel like it's going to be twisty, and I'm excited. Okay, and the final book that is on this mood TBR is a book that I'm very behind with, and that is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. So I feel like this was all anyone was talking about when it first came out. It had such high praises, everybody seemed to love it, so I jumped on the hype train. I bought the book because the cover is gorgeous as well. I like the sound of the premise, but then I just never got around to it, and I think it's because it is contemporary and I tend to not enjoy contemporaries. I don't know why. I guess I read for escapism, which is why I tend to prefer fantasy and sci-fi and horror. So I think for that reason I just haven't reached for it, but I do think that this one sounds delightful. I know the focus is very much on a friendship in here between two people who are game designers, which again sounds really fun. So I'm going to read you from the inside flap. Two kids meet in a hospital gaming room in 1987. One is visiting her sister, the other is recovering from a car crash. The days and months are long there. Their love of video games becomes a shared world of joy, escape and fierce competition, but all too soon that time is over and fades from view. When the pair spot each other 8 years later in a crowded train station, they are catapulted back to that moment. The spark is immediate, and together they get to work on what they love, making games to delight, challenge and immerse players, finding an intimacy in digital worlds that includes them in their real lives. Their collaborations make them superstars. This is the story of the perfect worlds Sadie and Sam build, the imperfect world they live in, and of everything that comes after success: money, fame, duplicity, tragedy. So yeah, two friends form this friendship in hospital playing video games, meet 8 years later, decide to make a career out of making video games, and I don't know. I'm very just interested to see what the hype is with this one, because it doesn't sound too like earth-shattering, does it, the synopsis, but everyone seems to love it. Apparently it's really wholesome and emotional and moving, and I don't know, the video game element intrigues me because I do find that an interesting field, and the fact that they are building, you know, these immersive worlds for players. So yeah, I'm intrigued, and I think the colourful cover and stuff, I think if ever I'm going to read this one, it's probably going to be in the spring. So yeah, look at this rainbow on the back, it's so fun. So that brings me to the end of this mood TBR. Those are all of the books that are kind of on my radar, books that I will be considering picking up over the next few months. Please let me know if you want me to prioritise any of these books, which one you think I should pick up first, or if there's any books that you think I haven't included on this list that would be good to read in spring, because I'm always looking for recommendations. And yeah, I hope that you are doing well. I hope that you're excited for spring as much as I am. And yeah, don't forget to like this video if you did like it, subscribe if you want to see some more from me, and I guess I'll see you next time with another video. Bye!